Hello friend. In my previous list program, I'm talking about this. I have gone much in detail about how to implement the list, and that too using the concept of function. But then I thought that why don't I come up with a very fundamental program which would give you a overview about how the list is going to work. So keeping that in view, I have written this small program. So let me show you what this program is all about. Over here I have gone for the declaration of a simple list, and I gave the name of the list as library. When we talk about list, and if you look at the syntax, it's represented in the form of a square bracket. It is basically reminding us of C or C++ or even Java array concept. But in context to Python, we don't directly have got an array, rather we have got a list. Well, we can work on array. For that we need the package called numpy, numerical Python. That's what we will be using later on. Now in context to list is actually going to follow a index. List has an index architecture, and that's how the indexing works in list, that start from the 0 index and it goes up to n-1. The list is actually a mutable data. In case of list, we can edit an existing value of list, and that's what the mutability feature of list is. We will see even that as well. So over here, after the declaring this particular empty list, I have also declared one variable that is holding a value 0, which I will be using it for the later addition purpose. And here I have directly taken the input in the code, but I'm not taking the input to the user, which I have taken in this particular program. Okay, there where I have taken input from the user, but over here I've directly given a hard coded values over here. So while you see this line, you will find over here I'm giving a call to system defined function called append. So list will make use of append function, and what append would do? Well, append would add an element in the list index wise. So that means initially the list is empty, and at the first insertion it would be added at the index position 0. Similarly, then what will be 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So that's how the indexing is going to work. So append function will always add the element at the end of the list. So it will first count what is the last index position, and thereafter it will insert the item. That's how the append function is going to work. And after inserting, it's going to perform like it will update the list accordingly, right? So what I can do is I can see the size of the list, right? How many element has been inserted, and for that reason we have got a wonderful function, and that is called len function. So len function will return me the value of the total size of the list. Now if you count over here, we know that the list indexing start from 0, but the len will return you the value from 1. So len will consider this to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So len will return me how many item are there in the list. It will return me total 5 items. So let me run the program and let's see what we are getting as an output. So python 3 space list underscore funda.py, and I hit in the enter, and it says total 5 elements are there in the list. Okay, so keep this thing in mind, that when you're working on just a second, yeah, when you are working on len function, it will return the index in the form of starting from the index value 1 rather than 0. But when you are working in the program, in the code part, you have to take care about this, that the indexing would actually start from 0. So here what I have done to prove this particular point, look over here, I'm printing the very first element, and for that reason what I have done, I've made use of format function over here. The format would going to print the item that is there at the index position 0 of this particular list. So this representation is very similar to the array representation, isn't it? So over here, whatever value is there, that will come and get hold at this particular placeholder. The same way, I know that indexing starting from 0, so it will be n-1. So that's the reason whatever the size which we have got in the after the len, this particular value will be -1, and we'll get the output over here. So let me see even that as well. And here it is. The first element is the 0th position is 56. That's what we are seeing over here, and the last position is 64. That's what we are seeing over here. Now by mistake, suppose if you are not giving this -1, then what will happen? This is a very interesting question, isn't it? What is going to happen? Let's check out at this point of time. Here you are going to come across an error. What error? It is an index error. This is something you should be very careful. In context to Python, even Python will give you the different type of errors. So over here we have got an error that is called index error. The list, because we are working on library, which is actually a list, is index out of range. That means the index which you have given actually is not a valid index. So that's what it's saying. So see, it has given a marker over here, the size is not a correct one. So with this we get to know that there's something called index type of error, and the index error will come if the output, I mean if you are trying to access such a index which actually is not a valid one, then definitely you will come across this particular type of error. So with this we get to know that the len function will return the data in the form of indexing 1, whereas in case of regular code we have to start from the index 0 and it will go up to n minus 1. Okay, next, now we have to go and print the element that is there inside the list. Now for this reason what we are going to do is something very interesting over here. Once again, let me clear this particular screen. So over here I'm making use of the range function. So what the range function is going to do, it will take minimum 2 arguments. The first argument is the lower bound, so the indexing would start from the 0 position, so that's the reason I have written 0 over here. So this 0 would go to this particular counter, that is cn, will have the value 0. And how long this particular loop will iterate? It will iterate up to sz. Okay, that means whatever length we have got, and that is 5. So why did I write 5 over here? That is also a very important question. Why didn't I write sz minus 1? I could have written even that also, right? So we'll see that why didn't I write this. So now if you come to the print statement, so over here the counter value is 0, initially it was 0, that 0 will be printed over here, and at the 0 index inside the list, what is the item? That is 656, that would get printed right over here. And after this it will go up and the range will increment the counter automatically, so you don't have to write any incrementation of the counter. So after that the cn is going to become 1 after incrementation from 0 to 1, and then it will show 1 at the position 1. What value is the 42, and again it will go up, 1 will become 2, at 2 the value 2 will be shown over here, the index will be 2, and at 2 position the 77 is there. That's what it will be shown over here. In this way it will go up, but the question is how long? Well, the upper bound, that is sz, which is 5, is not inclusive. I repeat, the upper bound is not inclusive, so it will not go up to 5, rather it will go up to 4. So if I run my code now, we will see that we are getting all the 5 items right over here. See, all the 5 items is there. Now in case if you by mistake if you write sz minus 1 like what we have done over here, keeping this in mind, if you write sz minus 1, in that case what will happen? The last element is not going to be printed. See, this element you are not going to print because sz is value 5, so 5 minus 1 is 4, and since upper bound is not inclusive, so 4 is not inclusive, so it will go up to 3, and 3 means it will be up to 34. So for that reason you don't have to add this extra decrementation, is not needed when you're working on size. I mean when you're working on range function, that whatever size is there, that will not create any problem. Always remember the upper limit is not inclusive. Okay, so that's how this is going to work, the range function is going to work, right? So let me comment the range function, and we have seen how the for loop works. Now the same thing if I want to do it with the while statement, then what will happen in that case? Well, first of all, in case of while, as you can see over here, it's given error because I didn't initiate. Okay, one more thing, like why am I decrementing the I mean why am I reinitializing the count when already this particular thing was there? Okay, can I use this particular count variable right over here? That is also important question, isn't it? Let me see that one. Can I use this particular count out of this for loop? Okay, well, many people might think that this particular cn is a local to this for loop, maybe it is not available outside this for loop. Is that so? So for that reason, let me print the value of count over here, that whether this particular variable is actually available outside this for loop or not. Okay, so this is a very tricky question which might come across in an interview, and by logic, if you're coming from C or C++ background, if you create a local variable, I mean if you're working on a loop like this, you usually we would be saying that this variable is a local to that. And let's see what happened in this case, and as I run the code, you can see it is showing that the cn is 4, and that is perfectly correct. Why? Because sz was 5 and range function will not go up to 5, it will go up to 4. For that reason the cn is actually 4. So this proves that if you declare a variable inside a loop, even if you come out of the loop, that variable is still available. That got proved because cn is not declared at the top, it is declared right on the loop itself. So cn is available even outside the loop as well. So keep this point in mind, that in case of for loop, or I mean to say in case of loop in Python, a variable if you declare, if it is outside the particular loop, you need to just reconfirm yourself whether that variable is still accessible or not. So that is what you are seeing over here. So for that reason, if I want to reuse this particular variable, okay, if I want to reuse this particular variable, so for that reason what I need to do, I have to just initialize it once again with 0 so that it doesn't create any problem. So this particular loop was responsible to print all the element of my list, and now what I want to do is that I want to perform the summation. I want to add all these numbers and I want to get the total out of that. And for that reason, this time I'm not using the for loop again, which I could have done, but just to make you aware about the way we will work on a while loop, for that reason I'm introducing the while loop right over here. So here what I'm doing, let's see. So I'm writing a while, and the same counter I'm going to write over here. The counter is going to be 0 over here, and because I'm targeting the first item of the list, and this will go up to sz. Now remember, here you are not writing range, so for that reason sz is having a value 5 and there is no index by the value 5, so for that reason I've written less than, so 5 less than, so that means it will go up to 4 times and there is no problem with that, right? And now what I'm doing, the counter is right now 0, so at the 0 position the item is 56. That what I'm going to add with the total. That what I'm going to add with the total. I've written total plus equals to, that means total equals to total plus library 0 index. That's what the thing is all about, right? Now I have already added, I have already declared this variable total with the value 0. Now my question is, if I don't write this, will there be any problem? Well, see, already there is a yellow squiggly coming up. Total is not defined. That has been said over here. Let me just run the code and see this is creating any kind of issue or not. Okay, so let me run over here, and as we can see over here, yes, there is some issue popping up. All the statement above this line got executed, as you can see right over here, but the right at this particular juncture there is a problem, and the error again now is a named error. So in this particular program, I have introduced two types of error. One is called index error. If you're trying to access an index that actually does not exist, for that reason you will be getting index error. And if you're trying to create a variable and if you're trying to work on that variable without defining it, you will get a named error. So this is the new error which you are seeing, name error, that the total is not defined. So for that reason, this line is compulsory. You have to write that, and that's yellow squiggly is no longer over there. Okay, so now what you are doing at the 0 index, whatever value is there, that value get added with the 0. So 0 plus that number is, 0 plus 56 is 56. That will come right over here. Now in case of range, the counter was incrementing automatically, but that is not going to happen right over here. So you have to take the initiative to increment the counter, so that from 0 index the counter moves on to 1, and hence the item at the 1 position of the library, that is 42. So 56 plus 42 would add up together, and that will get stored in the total. And that's how the loop is going to work on. So counter incrementation will be taken care by the developer in case of if you're using while loop, which is not required in case of range function. So for that reason, you will often see the range, this particular format is very frequently used, but the same thing you can do it like this way as well. Okay, so once the loop will iterate 5 times, after that it will generate the total, and finally that total is what I'm seeing as an output right over here. So let me see the final output, and the final output goes is this particular total. So in this particular program, we saw that how did I create an empty list, and directly in the code I have added this function with the help of append, but this is not at all a professional way of doing it. Definitely I will remodify my code and I will change and I will come up with a better alternative. But from this particular program, you got introduced to two different type of error. What is called index error, the other one is called name error. You saw some system defined function like len, and what is the principle that is been used in len, that is it will start indexing from 1. You saw how to use the format, you also saw how to use the append, and you saw two different loops, so that has been implemented right for making use of indexing, and how these indexing are going to work on the list. So with this we come to an end of this particular program. In the next program I will be working on min max, and I will also go for sorting of these items in the list. So stay tuned and keep watching. Bye bye.